Hi guys, Algebra 1. So a little background information that you really should know, but I don't like to make too many assumptions, so we're going to talk about it a little bit. Just a little review over exponents and order of operations. So hopefully you remember that exponents are a way of writing repeated multiplication. The base number, the larger of the numbers, the normal size number, is the number that's being repeated as a factor. And then the small superscript number, that tells us how many times that factor is repeated. All right? That's the exponent. So in this 4 to the third, also known as 4 cubed, so second power is also called squared, third power also called cubed. The other ones don't really have special names. So 4 is the base, 3 is the exponent. So that means 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. Not 12. Please not 12. 64, right? 4 times 4, 16, times 4 again, 64. So a little review about that. As we get into more things, there'll be times that we're going to review like how perhaps negative numbers behave, because a negative number, if it's inside parentheses being raised to an even power, will turn out positive because signs are the same, right? If there's a negative sign, like if that said negative 4 to the second power, but there's no parentheses, that really means 4 to the second power, then make it negative. So it does matter, and it's also going to matter like if you're typing it into a calculator. Most of the time we have to put parentheses around a negative number so that the calculator knows that you want to make the whole number raised to the power, not just the number, then take the opposite afterwards. Alright, so that's a little bit about exponents. Order of operations, again, I hope you remember, and if we did not have order of operations, we could get more than one answer for the same question. And one of the reasons I love math is the consistency of it, and so we don't want to do that. So you might have memorized something like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or you might be in the habit of saying PEMDAS. I kind of caution people a little bit, because so many times I see it on social media, and I get dragged into these discussions, because people think multiply always comes before divide. Well, because PEMDAS, M before D, folks, multiplication and division are on the same level. Think about multiplying by 1/2. It's the same thing as dividing by 2. So any division could actually get rewritten as multiplication, and any subtraction could be written as adding a negative. So multiplication and division are considered equal operations, and we go from left to right. And addition and subtraction, equal operations, move from left to right. If there are nested grouping symbols, as in parentheses, different shapes, work from the inside out. And come with me for a moment. We are going to also review integers. So for some integer review, so when we're adding integers, first off, remember integers, positive and negative numbers, and 0. Those are all integers, like your whole numbers, including 0, and their opposites. Those are integers. So when we're looking at those signed numbers, and it's an addition problem, if they're the same signs, we're going to add and keep the sign. If they're opposite signs, they're trying to go in different directions, so we're going to subtract, and the bigger number wins. Larger absolute value is going to decide the sign. So, for example, negative 8 plus negative 5 would equal negative 13. I lost $8 and then I lost $5. Altogether I lost $13. Opposite signs subtract. So if I said negative 8 plus 5, so I lost $8, but then I won $5. Well, they're opposite signs, so I'm actually going to subtract the two numbers. So 8 take away 5 is 3, but the bigger sign wins. I lost more than I won, so negative 3. All right. Subtraction. Subtraction, the rule we're going to use, we're basically going to change every subtraction problem into an addition problem and then follow the rules for addition. So to do that, you might say you just add the opposite, or you might say keep, change, change. So the first number is going to keep its current sign. So for instance, if I have negative 13 minus negative 3. So the first number would keep its sign and stay negative 13. Change the subtraction sign to addition and change the sign of the second number. So the negative 3 is now positive 3. Then I look at that and I just do what I do for addition. They're different signs, so I'm going to subtract. This is negative 10. Okay. You may also just remember that when you have two negatives right next to each other, like that subtract and negative 3, it's always going to become plus plus. And I don't typically rewrite this. I typically just keep, change, change, and make those two in the middle into plus signs. Hopefully that's something that's pretty familiar to you. You're going to have a chance to practice this. With multiplication and division, they follow the same rules as each other, right? Just think of two numbers at a time. If the signs are the same, it's going to be positive. Signs are different, it's negative. Because really what happens if there's two negative, it's like a negative negative, which just makes it back to a positive, because negative means opposite of. So the opposite of the opposite, well, you're just back to the regular thing, okay? Like that whole double negative that your English teacher warned you about. So for instance, of course, 5 times 3 is 15, but also negative 5 times negative 3 is also positive 15. We don't need to write negative negative 15, which would mean the opposite of negative 15, which would take us back to positive 15. So if the signs are the same, it's going to be positive. If the signs are different, whether I have a negative 5 times 3, or I have a positive 5 times a negative 3. Both ways, the answer is negative. It doesn't matter who's bigger in multiplying and dividing. Okay? It's going to be negative. Now, if there is a series of multiplication, or we're talking about exponents, if there are an odd number of negative factors, the answer is going to be negative. If there's an even number of negative factors, it's going to be positive. So that even works with the 2. When there were 2 negatives, it turned out positive. When there was only 1, that's odd, it turns out negative. So sometimes very quickly, we may not know the answer, but we know the sign of the answer. So to practice those positive and negative numbers, you're going to work in IXL, again in the algebra section, and in B1. And some of these, you're not finding the exact answer. It just wants to know, is this going to be positive or negative? Well, it's multiplication, and they're different, so it's going to be negative. Bam, bam. doesn't like that I'm not signed in. So that's what's going to happen in B1. And then in B2, you're going to have more problems with more operations where you have to keep in mind your sign number rules and your order of operations. So again, should be review. You're going to do B1, B2, and B3 on IXL. Should all be listed on Google Classroom also, but if you're listening, now you know.